The Honorable, the President.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth, and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and the prosperity of our nation. Amen.
Announcements by the President.
Honorable Senators, I have granted leave of absence to Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses and to Senator Wade Mark, both of whom are out of the country. Honorable Senators, I have received the following correspondence from Her Excellency the President Paula May Weeks, ORTT. The Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago by Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. To Mr. Ndale Young. Whereas Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ndale Young, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 27th of November 2018 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President St. Anne's this 26th day of November 2018. To Mr. Brian Nathaniel Bigg. Whereas Senator Wade Mark is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(b) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, acting in accordance with the advice of the Leader of the Opposition, do hereby appoint you, Brian Nathaniel Bigg, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 27th of November 2018 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of Senator Wade Mark. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President St. Anne's this 27th day of November 2018. Honorable Senators, Senators are required to take the oath.
I, Ndale Young,
having been appointed a member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities of the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
I, Brian Bigg, having been appointed a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Honourable Senators, in accordance with Standing Order 79-2, I wish to make the following appointments to the Sessional Select Committees for the 4th Session 2018-2019 of the 11th Parliament. Standing Orders Committee. Ms. Christine Kangaloo, Chairman. Mr. Nigel De Freitas, Member. Mr. Clarence Rambarat, Member. Mr. Wade Mark, Member. Ms. Sophia Choate, SC, Member. House Committee, Mr. Franklin Khan, Chairman, Mr. Foster Cummings, Member, Mr. Daniel Dookie, Member, Ms. Khadija Amin, Member, Dr. Varma Dayal Singh, Member. Committee of Privileges, Ms. Christine Kangaloo, Chairman, Mr. Nigel De Freitas, Member, Mrs. Jennifer Batiste Primus, Member, Mr. Wade Mark, Member, Mr. Deorup Timal, Member. Statutory Instruments Committee, Ms. Christine Kangaloo, Chairman, Mr. Clarence Rambarat, Member, Mr. Rohan Sinanan, Member, Mr. Gerard Ramdeen, Member, Mrs. Hazel Thompson-Aye, Member. Business Committee, Ms. Christine Kangaloo, Chairman, Mr. Franklin Khan, Member, Mrs. Paula Gopi-Schoon, Member, Mr. Wade Mark, Member, Mr. Paul Richards, Member.
Petitions, papers.
Minister in the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honour to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper in the name of the Minister of Finance. The audited consolidated financial statements of Evolving Technologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, ETEC, for the financial year ended September 30, 2017. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Princestown Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30, 2016, and the reports of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation for the years ended September 30, 2012 and 2013. Thank you, Madam President.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper in the name of the Minister of Housing and Urban Development. the Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation vesting amendment to the first schedule order 2018, the Trinidad and Tobago Housing Development Corporation vesting amendment to the first schedule number 2 order 2018.
Urgent questions.
Senator Amin.
Thank you, Madam President. Question to the Minister of Health. In light of the recent reports of the bacteria outbreak at the maternity ward of the Mount Hope Hospital, resulting in the death of newborn babies, can the Minister indicate what urgent measures are being implemented to address this problem?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We are coming to the end of that time of the year when we have a surge in deliveries. Those statistics are well known after Carnival. We have also had an unusual occurrence where many mothers are giving birth prematurely now. In the cases in both San Fernando and Mount Hope, we have women presenting to give birth as early as weeks 25 to 30 in these cases. And they are giving birth to baby as 1 pound. So when you have these severely preterm deliveries, low birth weight, and in some cases they are being born with infections transmitted from the mothers, these babies, unfortunately, have little chance of survival. Those are the 3 main reasons why we have a slight uptick. 1, the number of births post-Carnival. 2, a rash of preterm deliveries as low as 25 weeks to 30 weeks. 3, low birth weight as low as 500 grams or 1 pound. And 4th, a couple are being born with severe infections acquired from their mothers. I have been advised by the Director of Women's Health not to go into details in an effort to preserve the dignity of the mothers and not to give out too much information as to the specific infections because it may impact on patient privilege. Those are the reasons, and we are taking all reasonable steps to cope with the issue. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Senator Amin.
Madam President, I thank the Minister for his statistics. However, and I noted that he indicated urgent steps are being taken, but the question really is what urgent steps, without disclosing the mothers' names and so on. That's not necessary.
Grateful for the Senator. And, first of all, Senator Amin, I must say I'm glad that your recent accident, that you are fine. I sincerely mean that. So what we have done is expanded our neonatal intensive care units, or NICUs. ICU, when you put N in front of it, for neonates, NICUs. We have doubled the space in San Fernando. We have expanded Mount Hope, so you can have more space in between the cots carrying the babies, in excess of WHO's recommendation of 30 inches or 2.5 feet between cots. That is to minimize transmission of infection from one baby to another. We have also stepped up our infection control. We have revisited all the protocols, retrained, limited access to NICUs. Before, you might want to have freer access, but because of this rash of infections, we are limiting access to NICUs all over the country, because what is happening in one could happen in another one. But Madam President, as I say, it's an unfortunate amalgamation of factors, and we are doing everything possible to give these little babies a fighting chance. But unfortunately, sometimes circumstances stack up against them when they have an underdeveloped respiratory system. Could you imagine a 1 pound baby being born with an infection? That baby's chances of survival, and we have 2 doctors on the bench, are very, very slim. Thank you very much.
Senator Amin.
Madam President, the Minister mentioned that babies all over Trinidad could face this situation. Apart from Mount Hope, if you may permit me, Madam President, any other hospitals in Trinidad, are they being equipped to handle that type of infection?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. And what we have done, Sangre Grande Hospital never had a NICU, which is an indictment on the country, not a government. never had a NICU. They have one now. The Port of Spain Maternity Hospital had a NICU, but in the past year, we have expanded it, and now it is one of the most modern NICUs in the Caribbean. San Fernando Hospital should have had a brand new NICU 20 years ago. 20 years ago. We as a country failed San Fernando Hospital. Not any political party. As a country, we failed. And we are taking steps now to build a brand new NICU in San Fernando. How many? I don't have the figures as to how many units, but it's going to be almost as big as Port of Spain. Okay? Thank you very much, Madam President.
Questions on notice. Questions for oral answer.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the government is pleased to announce that it will be answering all questions, save and except question number 24. We asked for 2 weeks before that.
Ramdeen.
Welcome back, Madam President. Madam President, question number 5 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industry.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, in answer to question 5, it is as follows. Invoice number 3912145, dated October 30th, 2017, $179,098.78 fee, and $31,605.67 withholding tax. Invoice number 3912132, dated October 3rd, 2017, $25,000 fee, $4,411.76 withholding tax, giving you a grand total of $240,116.21, inclusive of withholding tax.
Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, through you to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, those figures that have been given as on the invoices, those are figures in TT dollars or in US dollars?
TT dollars.
TT dollars.
It was quite reasonable.
Okay. And through you, Madam President, to the Honourable Minister, are there any outstanding fees to Kroll Consulting of Canada in relation to this matter?
Minister.
I'm not entirely seized of the matter, but I don't see the amount of time that has elapsed. But I can always cross-check that and get back to you.
Yeah. Next question, Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, question number 6 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Madam President, no attorneys at law were engaged, invoiced, and/or paid by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries in this matter.
Next question, Senator Ramdeen.
Question number 7, Madam President, to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Madam President, the total fees paid to attorneys by Petrotrin in this subject matter is $1,549,993.36.
Senator Ramdeen.
Minister, Madam President, to the Honourable Minister, through you. Minister, that figure that you gave of 1 million plus, that includes all legal fees, litigation and non-litigation by Petrotrin in relation to this matter, in these matters, all the way up to the Privy Council?
My understanding that that is the case. The only outstanding matter now is the arbitration, which is something completely different.
Senator Mean, question number 23.
Question number 23 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
President, I can only have one minister in this house. But I accept it. Madam President, no one company will be given exclusive rights to supply products to Trinidad and Tobago. International traders, refiners, and marketers will be invited to participate in the supply of refined products. The company with the most competitive bid will be awarded the supply contracts. The products will include jet fuel, gas oil, unleaded gasoline 92 and 95 1. Competitive tendering, consistent with the company's policy and industry standard, was adopted for the RFP. The offers were assessed by an evaluation team comprising the Executive Director, Refining and Marketing, Executive Director, Finance, and Chief Financial Officer, and the Senior Manager, Marketing and Trading. The criteria for the evaluation were as follows: reliability and flexibility of supply, competitive commodity pricing, and 3, attractive commercial and payment terms. A 3-round bidding process, which led to the top 3 offers, was employed. The first 2 rounds in the process allowed for clarification and improvements in prices, which led to the final round and the selection of the top 3. All 3 bidders showed their ability to supply all grades. The successful offer was BP's Latin America Integrated Sales and Trading Group, whose offer was superior on price and commercial terms on the composite cargoes. On October 27, 2018, Petrotrin received its first shipment of refined fuel, one of 16 cargoes that will be delivered during the next 4 months under the agreement. This schedule of imported products has been designed to ensure that a 20-day supply of all product grades is assured in the local market. Supplies from January 1st, 2019 will be sourced under the new entity, which is the ParlView Fuels Trading Company Limited.
Senator Amin.
Thank you, Madam President. A follow-up question, to the Minister. Will the supply of fuel and refined products to Trinidad and Tobago by ParlView be in line with the procurement process recommended in the procurement legislation?
Minister.
Well, the process will be transparent. It will comply with the law. There's nothing untoward. Everything will be offered for tender, and there's standard protocols in sourcing this type of business. So I want the country and the Parliament to be assured that everything will be transparent and above board.
Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, through you to the Honourable Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. Honourable Minister, you said that the first shipment from BP came in on October 27th, 2018. When that shipment came in, Minister, can you tell us whether the variation in the common external tariff was put in place for that shipment at that time on the 27th of October 2018?
Minister.
I'm not quite sure as to the timeline, but I know the process was in train to get a waiver of the CET.
Yes, Senator Ramdeen.
Thank you, Madam President. But, Honourable Minister, Madam President, through you to the Honourable Minister, to get the CET, you have to have the CET before you can bring in that product and be able to clear it through customs, correct? Through you, Madam President.
Minister.
Well, whether you had a CET or not, all you have to do is pay the tariff, okay? But the fact of the matter is that the fuel is subsidized at the pump. So it matters not to the consumer what we bring in the fuel at. So if probably the first shipment missed the CET window, so be it. But the CET is now, waiver is now in place.
Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I know the Minister, in his answer, alluded to the bids being on a competitive basis. Can the Minister indicate the price that was paid for the first shipment of fuel?
Minister.
I don't have that price, but it is not a secret, and I could make it available.
Senator Hussain.
Can the Minister indicate how soon this will be made available to this Honourable Senate?
Minister.
Well, I'll try to make it available at the next sitting.
Next question, Senator Amin. We'll ask question number 25. Yes, Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 25 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Madam President, Petrotrin will continue to have the ability to supply the small multi-product cargoes, inclusive of aviation fuel, that are required by the CARICOM customers and countries. With a change in the business model and Petrotrin having to import products from outside the CARICOM region, there is a possibility of increases in prices, bearing in mind that these islands will now have the option to import on the open market.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Arising from the Honourable Minister's submission, has the government taken into consideration the extent to which the CARICOM neighbours may be impacted, given that he said that there should be some impact?
Minister.
The CARICOM market is unique in that it calls for small package sizes. So not all international traders can facilitate that market. That was the strategic advantage of Petrotrin. However, there are other players in the market. We have gone into a free market situation. We are importing fuel for redistribution to CARICOM. They have the option to continue with Paria or Petrotrin, as the case may be, and there's no CET now on fuel, so they can go to the international market and source the fuel at the most competitive prices, in their opinion.
Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President. Given the information shared by the Honourable Minister regarding no CET on fuel and the fact that Paria will be coming online, will there be any attempt by the government to reinstate the CET once Paria starts to distribute, provided that Garkara refining is up and running?
The CET doesn't come into play if we are not in the refining business. If and when Garkara refinery comes back on stream, based on what business model we choose, that will be a matter for consideration at that point in time.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Regarding the market that is lost, has the government quantified, regarding the whole scenario played out by the minister, has the government quantified the potential loss to Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister.
Well, it's not a potential loss. The new entity that probably will take control of the refinery very likely will have their own marketing arrangement. They will have their own supply of crude, and they will have their own marketing arrangement and their own markets to supply. So that is not an issue.
Next question, Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Question number 50 to the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
Acting Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. The closure of the High Commission in Uganda was based on the fact that clear objectives were not achieved, also that cost-benefit analyses determined that anticipated results were not being realized. It was also concluded that in view of the straitened financial circumstances faced by our Twin Island Republic, that the expense of approximately 7 million TT per annum to operate the mission could be better utilized by establishing a mission in a country where tangible gains could be more readily realized, and also that fact that the countries to which the High Commission in Uganda was accredited could be covered by the High Commission in Nigeria, that is, with respect to the countries in Africa, and a mission in the Middle East with respect to countries in that region. Thank you.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Could the Honourable Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs indicate which objectives were not being achieved?
Minister.
Thank you. Apart from deepening closer relations between Uganda and Trinidad and Tobago, there were definite agriculture diplomacy objectives and also energy diplomacy objectives as well. You would know, and particularly Senator Obika, that a pipeline was being built between Uganda and Kenya, and what we anticipated that there would be much export of our energy services, and also the opportunity to do energy study tours within Trinidad and Tobago, so that Trinidad and Tobago could have been part of the building of the capacity of persons from Uganda as they seek to develop their energy industry. That did not materialize. In fact, I think there was only one such tour, and the Trinidad and Tobago Energy Chamber perhaps did only one visit. And what I do know about the agricultural aspect of it is that NAMDEFCO did not quite go the distance that was expected with regard to those projects.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Regarding the closure of the mission, one of the countries that the Honourable Minister would have mentioned would have been observer status at the African Union. Is it that the mission in Nigeria is fulfilling that particular mission?
Minister.
Thank you. I do believe that the mission in Nigeria would be accredited to the organization. What organization? Yeah, I do believe it's the embassy in Nigeria.
Senator Ramdeen.
Madam President, thank you very much. Madam President, through you to the Honourable Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. Minister, in the last 3 years, having regard to the figures that you've given us for the expenses for running this mission, having spent over $21 million on this mission over the last 3 years, what benefits have Trinidad and Tobago gotten for that expenditure of almost $21 million in this mission?
Well, I would extend that to over the last 8 years and include the benefits that were perhaps achieved for the last 8 years under your government and also under our government as well. These, I'm sure, were evaluated. I said that. I responded to you in that regard. All of those achievements were looked at against the objectives that we had hoped to achieve. And, of course, there is, with the end result that it made did not make any sense to continue, certainly financial, to continue in that regard. But we continue to deepen our relations with all of the African countries through the existing missions that are there in Nigeria and also in South Africa.
Senator Obika, I think this is your last question.
Yes, last follow-up. Yes, thanks, Madam President. The Honourable Minister stated, and congratulations on having an additional portfolio. We appreciate the answers. $7 million as the cost for the mission, but would we not have benefited by having training, for example, at NESC, 45,000 per student at the drilling academy?
Senator Obika, that question does not arise. Next question, Senator Obika.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam President. Question number 51 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with regards to the matter raised, I wish to inform the Senate that reinstatement work have been undertaken in the Southern Main Road, 62 kilometer to 87 kilometer. This work includes patching and the Water and Sewage Authority works. I can report for the last 3 months, Madam President, in September there was 18 square meters of patching, in October 142 square meters of patching, in November 2018 199 square meters of patching. Madam President, the Highways Division has also is in the process of evaluating a tender for the replace patching of 629 square meters, full deep patching of 102 square meters, and spot patching consisting of 370 tons of asphalt. This work is expected to start shortly.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Could the Honourable Minister indicate who would have been the contractor or contractors that did these works that he mentioned?
That question doesn't arise. Next question.
Could the Honourable Minister indicate when would proper road repair be done, given that patching is not working? I traverse those roads daily.
Minister.
Madam President, if the Honourable Minister traverses the road and is familiar with Honourable Member, and is familiar with the terrain, you'd recognize that that area, Labrita Point Fortin, there's a big challenge with the surface. The asphalt continues to move. And that is posing a threat to the WASA pipes, which, because of the movement, there's a continuous damage to the WASA pipe, which affects the roadway. So once the completion of the highway from San Fernando to Point Fortin is completed, then a more robust work will be done on that aspect of the roadway. Thank you.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. If you would permit me to ask, given the Minister's ending statement, when would the highway progress be completed, expected to be completed, to Point Fortin?
Minister.
Madam President, I think there's a motion on the agenda this evening dealing with the highway. Exactly the question that you're asking now. So I, prefer to deal with that in the motion. I'm very happy that you brought that motion.
Any further supplementary questions?
Yes.
Next question. Yes, Senator.
Yes, Madam President. The Minister spoke about, well, the question is about infrastructural work. There is need for some retention walls as well, which is
question.
Well,
please ask a question. It's a supplementary question.
Does your program include the need for, include any retention walls to support the roadway?
Minister.
Madam President, whenever we're doing road rehabilitation, the engineers will spec the area, and whatever is required will be done. Thank you.
Next question. Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Question number 52 to the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Minister of Rural Acting Minister of Rural Development and Local Government.
Madam President.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Thank you very much. Madam President, Madam President, with your leave, I respond to this question on behalf of my colleague as the minister responsible for the management of the San Fernando Hill. Madam President, we deeply regret the incident that took place on August 14, 2018, and are grateful for the recovery of the young person. Madam President, since September 2015, fencing was installed along the perimeter of certain sections of the San Fernando Hill, leading to sharp drops. That is since September 2015. In many cases, the perimeter of the area accessed by the public has brick walls, and other sections are protected by trees planted along the perimeter. In those sections, Madam President, without the protection of trees and walls, protective fencing has been installed. Madam President, on the day in question, the young person climbed on top of the protective wall, and despite calls from the Forestry Division officials on site, he jumped. He was protected from fatal damage by the trees in that particular area and other protective measures. Madam President, I thank you.
Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I thought the former mayor of San Fernando would have answered as the minister, but okay,
ask your question. Yes.
The question I want to ask is that this San Fernando Hill is a tourist attraction, given the revelations by the Honorable Minister, which was more detailed. How can we prevent this in future?
No, you're asking the same question. You've asked in a different way. The minister's answered your question that was posed. So do you have another supplementary question? Okay.
Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on definite matters of urgent public importance.
Senator Haynes.
I hereby secure leave to move the adjournment of the Senate today under Standing Order 16 to discuss an urgent matter of definite public importance, namely, the failure of the government to inform the public of any plan to ensure the future viability of the Petrotrin employees' pension plan and any guarantees that eligible Petrotrin workers will receive the pensions they were promised. The matter is definite because it deals specifically with the failure of the government following its closure of the state-owned oil company, Petrotrin, to be forthcoming with any information concerning the management and execution of its fiduciary duty of making employer-related payments under the Petrotrin Employee Pensions Plan. The matter is urgent because of the potentially disastrous effect on current and former employees. In light of the assessment by Republic Bank regarding the long-term impact of Petrotrin's restructuring and on the Petrotrin Employee Pension Plan, indicating that there are 4 out of 5 scenarios in which the pension funds would be exhausted in 25 to 30 years. The matter is of public importance because it deals with the thousands of current and former Petrotrin employees who are now uncertain as to whether or not they will receive their pension.
Honourable Senators, I have considered the motion of the Senator and I am not satisfied that this matter as presented qualifies under this standing order. Senator Obika.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I hereby seek your leave to move the adjournment of the Senate today under Standing Order 16 for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent public importance, namely, the failure of the government to properly manage the impending closure of the Augustus Long Hospital at Pointe-à-Pierre, which will cause severe distress to the lives of Petrotrin employees, retirees, and their families. This matter is definite because it concerns a very real and certain risk to the health care afforded to tens of thousands of nationals, constituted by some 5,000 existing employees of Petrotrin, an estimated similar number of retirees of Petrotrin, and over 30,000 family members who access these healthcare services. It is also definite because of the loss of jobs to a significant number of medical workers, including doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, much needed in the system. The matter is urgent because if this situation is not managed and contained in a responsible manner, it could lead to deleterious effects on the healthcare of persons currently dependent on the medical coverage at Augustus Long. The matter is of public importance because of thousands of Petrotrin workers, retirees, and ex-employees are now without the health care they have contributed to and depended upon for decades.
Honourable Senators, I have considered the motion as presented and I am not satisfied that this qualifies under this standing order.
Introduction of bills. On the supplemental order paper, the National Emblems of Trinidad and Tobago Regulation Amendment Bill 2018 in the name of the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the Senate and moved by a minister.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that this Senator agree to the following appointments to the Joint Select Committees. Mr. Gavin Simonet, in lieu of Mr. Ronald Huggins, and Ms. Amrita Deunarain, in lieu of Ms. Jennifer Raful, on the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. Ms. Sharice Sipasad, in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon, on the Public Accounts Committee. Ms. Amrita Deunarain, in lieu of Mr. David Small, on the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. Mr. Derup Timal, in lieu of Mr. Stephen Crease, on the Joint Select Committee of Land and Physical Infrastructure. Dr. Varma Dial Singh, in lieu of Mr. H.R. Ian Roach, on the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commission, and Statutory Authorities, including the THE. Mr. Anthony Vera, in lieu of David Small, and Mr. Gavin Simonet, in lieu of Mr. Ronald Huggins, on the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. Mr. Derup Timal, in lieu of Mr. David Small, on the Joint Select Committee on Energy Affairs. Ms. Hazel Thompson Ai, in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahabir, on the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity. Dr. Varma Dial Singh, in lieu of Mr. H.R. Ian Roach, on the Joint Select Committee on Government Assurances. Dr. Varma Dial Singh, in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon, on the Joint Select Committee on Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016. Mr. Anthony Vera, in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon, on the Joint Select Committee on Cybercrime Bill 2017. Dr. Maria Dillon Remy, in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahabir, on the Joint Select Committee on the Constitution Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill 2018. Ms. Sharice Sipasad, in lieu of Mr. Stephen Crease, on the Joint Select Committee on the Mutual Administrative Assistance on Tax Matters Bill 2018 and the Tax Information Exchange Agreement Bill 2018. Ms. Amrita Deunarain in lieu of Mr. Torel Shrikisud, and Mr. Derup Timol in lieu of Ms. Jennifer Raful on the Joint Select Committee on the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill. Mr. Avinash Singh in lieu of Ms. Ayana Lewis, and Dr. Maria Dillon Remy in lieu of Mr. Torel Shrikisud on the Joint Select Committee on Parliamentary Broadcasting Committee. And finally, Dr. Maria Dillon Remy in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahaber on the Joint Select Committee on Foreign Affairs.
Honourable Senators, the question is, be it resolved that this Senate agree to the following appointments to the Joint Select Committees. Mr. Garvin Simonet in lieu of Mr. Ronald Huggins and Ms. Amrita Deonarine in lieu of Ms. Jennifer Raful on the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. Ms. Charisse Sipasad in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon on the Public Accounts Committee. Ms. Amrita Deonarine in lieu of Mr. David Small on the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. Mr. Derup Timal in lieu of Mr. Stephen Crease on the Joint Select Committee, Land and Physical Infrastructure. Dr. Varma Dayal Singh in lieu of Mr. H.R. Ian Roach on the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions and Statutory Authorities, including the THE. Mr. Anthony Vera in lieu of Mr. David Small, and Mr. Garvin Simonet in lieu of Mr. Ronald Huggins on the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. Mr. Derup Timal in lieu of Mr. David Small on the Joint Select Committee on Energy Affairs. Mrs. Hazel Thompson-Ai in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahabir on the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity. Dr. Varma Dayal Singh in lieu of Mr. H.R. Ian Roach on the Joint Select Committee on Government Assurances. Dr. Varma Dayal Singh in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon on the Joint Select Committee on Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016. Mr. Anthony Vera in lieu of Ms. Melissa Ramkisoon on the Joint Select Committee on the Cybercrime Bill 2017. Dr. Maria Dillon Remy in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahabir on the Joint Select Committee of the Constitution Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill 2018. Ms. Charisse Sipasad in lieu of Mr. Stephen Crease on the Joint Select Committee on the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 and the Tax Information Exchange Agreements Bill 2018. Ms. Amrita Deonarine in lieu of Mr. Torel Shrikisud and Mr. Derup Timal in lieu of Ms. Jennifer Raful on the Joint Select Committee on the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill 2018. Mr. Avinash Singh in lieu of Ms. Ayana Lewis and Dr. Maria Dillon Remy in lieu of Mr. Torel Shrikisud on the Joint Select Committee on the Parliamentary Broadcasting Committee. Dr. Maria Dillon Remy in lieu of Dr. Daneshwar Mahabir on the Joint Select Committee on Foreign Affairs. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, private members' business, motions.
Senator Ramdean.
Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the Board of Petrotrin announced on August 28, 2018, that the company's refinery will cease its crude oil refining operations. And whereas the Prime Minister on September 2, 2018, confirmed that the Cabinet had accepted a recommendation of the Petrotrin Board to close its refinery. And whereas it is evident that the decision of the government was without stakeholder consultation and with little or no disclosure to the public. And whereas the decision to close the Petrotrin refinery will have direct adverse consequences on thousands of persons, as well as on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that the Senate take note of the failure of the government to disclose a viable and credible plan to address the needs of those persons and businesses affected by the closure of the refinery, and be it further resolved that this Senate condemn the actions of the government in closing the Petrotrin refinery. Madam President, since the 28th of August and the announcement by the chairman of the board of Petrotrin that the refinery at Petrotrin would be closed, the opposition and the people of Trinidad and Tobago have continuously been asking answers of the government. And despite all that the government has said, Madam President, there has been very little information coming to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, coming to the workers of Petrotrin, coming to the businesses that are affected, and coming to the hard-working citizens, 5,322 of which will not have a job after this Friday. The reason why we've brought this motion, Madam President, is because there exists a duty on the government to explain and justify to the people of Trinidad and Tobago the closure of the refinery at Petrotrin and the restructuring of Petrotrin. And there has been very little information and very little disclosure from the government. In another place, it was said that the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, has spoken to the country 3 times in relation to this Petrotrin issue and the closure of the refinery. But what we can say, Madam President, from where we speak, on behalf of the hard-working citizens who will be without a job on Friday, 5,322 of them, is that all that the Prime Minister has said in those 3 speeches that he's given has brought very little comfort or relief to the hard-working citizens who have to face the breadline after November 30th, 2018. And as this entire fiasco unravels itself, Madam President, it is very sad that while the government has bombarded the country and the media with their side of the story, the hard-working people who are most directly affected have not gotten their day to tell the story that they have to face after the 30th of November, 2018. And we in the opposition, Madam President, will continue to advocate this issue and the hardship that will be suffered by those persons and every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago who will be affected by this decision. We have said from the very outset, Madam President, that the decision to close Petrotrin was one that was calculated, it was one that was intentional, and it was one that was deliberate by this government. It didn't start on August 28, 2018. And I want to make a case this afternoon, Madam President, to show the country the manner in which this government has orchestrated the demise of Petrotrin in order to put in place the plan that is being put in place now. And let me start off very early in this story, on the 7th of November 2016. And I want to refer to an email from Ronald Hoff. Ronald Hoff, in 2016, was the Chief Financial Officer of Petrotrin. And in 2016, this is what Ronald Hoff was writing to the President of Petrotrin, Mr. Fitzroy Harewood at the time. And let people of Trinidad and Tobago listen carefully to what the Chief Financial Officer in Petrotrin was telling the President of Petrotrin in 2016. Dear Mr. President, I have been reflecting on a meeting with the Finance Minister and staff on Friday, November 4th at 11:20 a.m. Listen to the precise language that is being used by Mr. Hoff. On November 4th, 11:20 a.m. in the Minister's conference room. At that meeting, the Minister, that is the Minister of Finance, gave definite instructions that directly impact my employment situation. These instructions including the following. Number 1, I am to immediately cease and desist having discussions with banks pertaining to the financing of Petrotrin. That the Chief Financial Officer was given instructions by the Minister of Finance to cease and desist from having any discussions with banks pertaining to the financing of Petrotrin. Listen to number 2, Madam President. I am to immediately cease and desist from having discussions with debt holders. I am to cancel the speaking engagement at the upcoming Caribbean Debt Conference in Jamaica. all financing obligations, number 4, all financing obligations for Petrotrin would be handled by the Ministry of Finance, specifically Suzette Leachy, in her position as Permanent Secretary of Debt for government-related entities. The debt of Trinidad and Tobago government-related entities is under the sole purview of the Finance Ministry, and the Minister views my recent intervention as a violation of the Companies Act. And the Minister clearly indicated my previous actions were not my fault, as the previous Petrotrin Board and Finance Ministry had approved my hiring and job description, but he was now making clear his new directives. So you know what this meant, Madam President? What we are seeing played out today on a daily basis started from the time this government came into power, because there was a plan to bring down Petrotrin. And let me just indicate, Madam President, after this letter was sent, the contract of Mr. Hoff was bought out so that they could put who they want on the board and they could put who they want to get their job done. Now, Madam President, I have listened to this debate on Petrotrin from the time it started. I've listened to everything that the Minister of Finance has said. I've listened to everything that the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries has said. I listened to a press conference where the Minister of Finance told this country that Petrotrin was not paying its taxes. That is the message that was sent out to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And specifically, the Minister of Finance was telling the country that the reason Petrotrin has to be closed down is because Petrotrin, he made specific reference to it, was not paying any supplemental petroleum tax. So let us test the credibility of the information that is put in the public domain by the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, the Attorney General, and the Prime Minister. Let's test it. I have the total taxes paid by Petrotrin, produced by Petrotrin's Finance Department from 2009, financial year 2009 to financial year 2018, August 31st. Madam President, how this message could be given to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that Petrotrin is not paying its taxes and not paying any supplemental petroleum tax for years? That is what they told the country. That was the justification given by this government for shutting down Petrotrin. Madam President, in 2009, rounding off the figures, Petrotrin paid $1.7 billion, not million, $1.7 billion in supplemental petroleum tax. In 2010, they paid $1.8 billion. In 2011, they paid $1.5 billion. In 2012, they paid $1.8 billion. In 2013, they paid $1.4 billion. In 2014, Petrotrin paid $2.662 billion in supplemental petroleum tax. And the Minister of Finance told the country that they did not pay any supplemental petroleum tax. So let me tell you when they stopped paying supplemental petroleum tax, Madam President. Petrotrin stopped paying supplemental petroleum tax in 2016, 2017, and 2018 under this government. So let the minister tell us why between 2016 and 2018, 2016, 2017, 2018, under the PNM government, no supplemental petroleum tax. But you want to make it seem as though for this extended period of time, it's under you. It is under the PNM that they paid no supplemental petroleum tax. That is the truth, and you should tell the country the truth. Petroleum profit tax. I now went through all the details, Madam President. Between 2009 and 2018, Petrotrin paid $6.7 billion in petroleum profit tax. Green Fund levy. Between that period of time of 2009 and 2018, they paid $277 million in Green Fund. VAT, they paid $2.9 billion. And listen to this one, Madam President. Between 2009 and 2018, Petrotrin, the same Petrotrin that they're speaking about, paid $6.5 billion in royalties. $6.5 billion in royalties. When the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy Industries is telling us Petrotrin not paying any taxes. Production levy, they paid $1.9 billion. When you check up SPT, PPT, Green Fund, VAT, royalties, production levy, oil impost, head license, and money held in escrow, between 2009 and 2018, Petrotrin paid $30.652 billion to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the story that has not been told by the government. So, Madam President, I asked the Minister in question and answer whether the common external tariff was engaged, was varied, when this first shipment of products came in on October 27, 2018. The Minister said he wasn't sure. Well, on my way here to do this debate today, somebody, I want to thank them, somebody from the other side passed some documents here. Legal Notice 165, Legal Notice 166, and Legal Notice 164. All the planning that you all doing, all the advice that you all taking, all the expert, Robert Riley, Espinay, the whole board, Arjun Singh, everybody giving the government advice. You know, the government brought a ship, park it outside in the Gulf of Paria with product on it. And a member of the government informed me that while that was going on, according to the words of the minister, on the October 27, 2018, this government that taking so much advice and this new board run by Mr. Espinay, right, couldn't put in place the common external tariff because by Legal Notice 164, 165, and 166, the common external tariff was reduced, you know when, Madam President? Let me tell you when. On the 23rd of November. On the 23rd of November, 2018. That's a good planning of the PNM. That was a good planning. When the minister, I have a report here where the minister said more than a month ago, right? They knew that the first shipment was going to come in on October 27th. But the good planning that the government was doing, they couldn't vary the external tariff to do that. You see, Madam President, this motion is brought because we want answers. That's what we want. We want to know who are the people responsible for what is going on in Petrotrin. And you know, while we keep hearing about Mr. Espinay and Mr. Espinay, there's a very important player behind the scenes in this entire scenario that we're hearing very little about, but we'll hear a little bit about him today. Right? The name of that individual is Mr. Robert Riley. Right? Mr. Robert Riley, in this restructuring exercise, I would like the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries to tell us what is the part being played by Mr. Robert Riley, who has been paid $450,000 in one invoice for advice being provided to Petrotrin. You see, it's a very dangerous thing, in my view, from where I sit, and the people I talk to, who are the workers of Petrotrin, who on Friday must decide how they're going to provide food for their children after Friday, next week, and during December. But you know, while that is going on, people's son and daughter married in Barbados. Wedding going on, right? But you know what's going on here? Heartache for the hard-working people down here. So I want to know if the plan of the government is to turn Trinidad and Tobago like Saudi Arabia, where we have a royal family running the operations of the petroleum industry. That's what I want to know. Because you see, Madam President, I have a memorandum here from Petrotrin, dated October 18, 2018, signed off by the Corporate Secretary, Sharon Morris Cummins. And you see this idea that the government don't want to give information? I want the government to know that every board minute that is signed off by Sharon Morris Cummins down in Petrotrin at Pointe-à-Pitre, we will get it in the opposition. As soon as they send, it come in here. October 28, 2018, subject Professional Resourcing Services Limited, PRSL. At a meeting of the Board of Directors held on September 26, 2018, members ratified, these are board members, they ain't passing, they're ratifying the engagement of Professional Resourcing Services Limited. You know why they had to ratify, Madam President? They had to ratify because since September 17th, these people got a check for 1.527 million on invoice number 2006892 for contingency fees. Wow. So on October 18th, after they got another check for $1.537,811.02 for contingency fees too, the board is on October 18th ratifying PRSL, through which, and here what they hired for, Madam President, through which the services of the transition office manager, Miss Lisa Ali, is being provided, as well as the services of Mr. Michael Wiley to the Exploration and Production Division for the time being. The terms and conditions of the engagement of PRSL are to be agreed by the Human Resource Committee. Money doesn't pay out, Money pay out since September 17th and October 9th. And another check coming out on October 26th. But you know what? While money being paid out, the terms, this is a Petrotrin memorandum, Madam President. The terms are to be agreed by the Human Resource Committee. No problem. Members agreed that Mr. Michael Wiley will be the new head of the upstream business company to be formed consequent on the ongoing transition of the company. No problem. So PRSL, they rack up their bill, they get paid, everything honky-dory. But here the best part, Madam President. I have another board minute here. But this one is dated November 20th. That's 7 days ago. Listen to what is going on at Petrotrin. 7 days ago. This is to the chairman, Mr. Espinay, from the corporate secretary. Let Trinidad and Tobago understand how things are being run down at Petrotrin. Approval of management services for legacy Petrotrin. Please be advised that on 20th of November 2018, members approved via round robin. Round robin. This is a new management style down at Petrotrin, the legacy company. 20th of November 2018, members, these are members of the board, approved via round robin the approach of a single, listen carefully, of a single source engagement of a contractor to provide legacy Petrotrin with the personnel and services necessary to perform certain management services in relation to asset and property maintenance and management, legal portfolio management, contract administration, financial accounting, salaries and benefit payments, and general administrative services. So what really going on here is that this company that is going to be engaged is virtually doing everything for legacy Petrotrin. When they tell when the government comes and tells the country, don't worry, jobs come in, 4 new companies opening up. Listen to who get the contract. These services will initially be required for a period of 6 months, commencing 2018 December 1st, during which time the RFP process will be conducted for all required services after. So 6 months, here we're going on, Madam President. It is intended that once the quotation received is acceptable, that a merit award will be sought under clause 20.1A4 of the procedure guidelines for tenders and contracts for works and services, read as follows. Madam President, you know what this is? This is the board of Petrotrin sole selecting somebody for 6 months, right? And here the justification from the board. The justification for this approach is that there will be a number of legacy issues to be addressed within the company immediately after 2018 November 30th. And these activities need to be undertaken to preserve the assets of the company and to complete the transition process smoothly and without prejudice. Not a single tendering, 6 months. Millions of US dollars going down the drain here with this company. Not a single person from Trinidad and Tobago getting a work here, right? And you telling me this is that is why, Madam President, that is why last week I said to the country, nothing is going to change under this new Petrotrin. It is the same old khaki pants. It is the same corruption. It is the same mismanagement. It is the same result that is going to happen under this new Petrotrin. Nothing is going to change. Now, let me show the country now, right, what is going to happen under this new Petrotrin. On the 3rd of July, under confidential McKinsey and Company memorandum of confirmation to Wilfred Espinay, right? This is McKinsey and Company, the people who get 68 million of Trinidad and Tobago dollars to give advice to the board of Petrotrin. McKinsey has been paid 68 million by Trinidad and Tobago for advice. So I took up this report that was given to me, headed up till July 2018, Managing and Transition of Petrotrin. This is what we pay 68 million for. Good. So I thought that it's going to have something fabulous inside here. This was going to be the solution to the ills of Petrotrin. So I found something very strange, Madam President. I started to flag them as I go along. I thought this company, after being paid 68 million, was going to move into Petrotrin and start to put things in order. Lo and behold, here what McKinsey is telling Petrotrin. Petrotrin will need to retain the support of a human resource advisor. And they give them what they have to do. Advisors should have experience with local unions and familiarity with legal matters associated with termination of employment. So that is one. Petrotrin resources and capabilities. They tell them you have to get a very experienced CFO. Will be needed to lead the financing of this size and with a company of this size and complexity. They tell them they need to get a top debt advisor, an external counsel. It's like a shopping list, Madam President. What these people were paid $68 million to do is to tell Petrotrin who to hire and how to hire them. That's what they were paid $68 million to do. But here's the best part, Madam President, the most important part. Professional arrangements. This is a list of what Petrotrin has to, who they have to go now and get, right? Who they have to go now and pay in US dollars. But here it is. We agreed to structure our support for this project as an extension of our contract for strategic review at the end of 2017. We will provide a draft contract extension with the aim to keep additional terms as simple as possible, building on our prior terms. Here is part, Madam President. Fees for the project will be 4.75 million US. Payments will be required in advance of execution of works according to the following schedule. Start of the project, 2.25 million US. August 6, 1.25 million US. September 3rd, 1.25 million US. This is the same company. This is the same company that they're telling us is going to be a legacy. This is no different, and I will keep repeating it. This is no different from what took place in Petrotrin between 2002 and 2010 and landed us with cost overruns of 19 billion TT dollars. But I found a little interesting paragraph, Madam President. I thought I would share with you in this report. This is what McKinsey is telling us. The work we plan to undertake with you has a high risk of emerging into the public domain of Trinidad and Tobago. It will be politically sensitive, and it is also likely to attract significant comment, including adverse border reactions. Here it is, Madam President, around fees and associated value for money. The focus and context of our work obviously involve both legal and broader reputational risk for our firm. So they done putting their cards on the table in front, you know. They know what is going to happen, right? They understand that what they're doing is milking Trinidad and Tobago, right? And at the end of the day, who paid for this? Not the PNM, not the cabinet, not the government. Who is paying for this? The people of Trinidad and Tobago, all 68 million. But Madam President, they have one particular issue I want to deal with this afternoon. You know, the leader of the opposition has said over and over that one of the fallouts of this Petrotrin closure of the refinery is going to be that Petrotrin has a number of ongoing litigation. There's A&V Oil and Gas, there's an arbitration, There's ULSD arbitration going on. And you know, the government doesn't seem to, they ain't really taking that too seriously because they're not concerned too much about that. So, thought I'd do a little bit of research on this particular issue. Now, Madam President, when I first spoke on this issue about Petrotrin, I raised the issue about this arbitration that is going on with respect to the ultra-low sulfur diesel plant. I understand after that contribution was made, the minister made some inquiries down at Petrotrin to find out what I was talking about because they were not aware of what was going on with this arbitration. So I want to ask the minister to give us a little bit of answers this afternoon. So I have the PowerPoint presentation, Minister, that was made on the 19th of March 2018 to the board of Petrotrin. It is headed up Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, ultra-low sulfur diesel project, presentation to the board, 19th of March 2018, privileged and confidential. So let me tell you why it's privileged and confidential, Madam President. In this document, this is a document that was presented to the board of Petrotrin in relation to this arbitration. An arbitration where Samsung, the contractor, has sued Petrotrin. And the value of the claim, according to this document, is a PowerPoint presentation that was made to the board of Petrotrin. Samsung sued Petrotrin for $232 million US dollars. Million US dollars. And when the claim was assessed by Petrotrin, you know, Petrotrin said, Madam President, they said delay expert preliminary assessment indicates a good defense on the merits. Problem. That is.
Ramdeen, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
The arbitration to which you are making reference, is it ongoing?
It's complete.
It's finished?
Finished.
Okay, and has there been a determination?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay.
I'm coming to that. I'm sorry that I didn't say that at the outset. So that's a very important point that I'm coming to, Madam President. So Petrotrin counterclaimed on Samsung. And Petrotrin claimed, let people of Trinidad and Tobago listen carefully, $255 million US dollars. 255. Listen to what, under the heading, risk and probability of outcome, the Petrotrin board was told. The decision not to complete the plant would erode the structural remedial claim. It will cost Petrotrin $144 million US dollars. The decision by the P&M appointed board, led by Wilfred Espine, not to complete the plant, would cost the people of this country $144 million US dollars. Right? Listen to what the probability of Petrotrin's claim was. Queen's Counsel has advised that his assessment, having looked at the evidence and witness statements available to date, is as follows. Structural remedial work claim, $144 million US dollars. This is Petrotrin's claim. Has significantly better than a 50% chance of succeeding. So hear that, Madam President? I want the country to hear this, you know. Seismic upgrade aspect of the claim, 41 million, has a reasonable prospect of success, but less than 50. So let me forget about our 40 million US. 144 million US has a significantly better than 50% chance. On the 27th of September, a month ago exactly, the board of Petrotrin said, at a meeting of the board of directors, this is signed off by Sharon Morris Cummins, at a meeting of the board of directors held on September 26, 2018, the members of this board, listen to what they decided. The members of this board authorized the chairman, Mr. Wilfred Espine, to settle the whole of the dispute with Samsung through mediation, and agreed that the chairman is to have the authority to settle the dispute at whatever level, listen to the wording of this, at whatever level he sees fit, but shall provide the intended figure to members of the board beforehand. So here I claim 144 million US dollars, right? Better than 50% chance of success. Madam President, let me, I came into possession of something that was very private and confidential, something that has a confidentiality clause in a document called the Heads of Terms. Samsung Engineering This is the determination of the matter, Madam President. Samsung Engineering versus the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago. So listen carefully to what Mr. Wilfred Espine went and do. 144 million US. Listen to what they went and do. The claimants, that is Samsung, shall pay to the respondents, that's Petrotrin, the sum of 20 million US dollars. 20 million US dollars. You all sell out the country for 20 million US dollars, inclusive of VAT and sales tax, right? Big confidentiality clause, you know, subject to 6.2. Each party shall treat as confidential and not disclose to any other person the existence, the terms, or the subject matter of this agreement.
Working in secret.
The negotiations relating to this agreement. This is public money, you know. This is not GTL. This is $10 billion of money belonging to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that went down the drain in the ULSD plant. And hurrah, Mr. Wilfred Espine, with his signature on the back, right? Sign off, go on to London, sell out the people of Trinidad and Tobago for 20 million US. No problem. Somebody going to jump up and say, well, it had a claim and a counterclaim and you had to set it off. I have an answer for that too. The lawyers who were involved, the QC that was given the advice in this matter. I have the emails from the QC. Mr. Karim Gailey QC, who was advising Petrotrin, who was the advocate in this matter in the arbitration. You know what the QC was telling Petrotrin, Madam President? When you set off the claim and the counterclaim, listen to what the QC was telling Petrotrin. Let me just give the particulars so everybody will understand. This is an email from Mr. Karim Gailey QC on the 12th of September 2018 at 1600 hours. To who? Robert Riley and Wilfred Espine. I propose that our opening position at the mediation is that Petrotrin will pay 25 million on their claims. Here's the best part. Meaning the net recovery to Petrotrin was supposed to be 38 million US dollars. So if the net recovery was supposed to be 38 million US dollars, why we only get 20 million US dollars on this arbitration? Perhaps Mr. Riley and Mr. Espine, right, will tell us that. But what I can tell you, Madam President, is that this government and that board that this government appointed down at Petrotrin, by taking the decision to close the Petrotrin refinery, compromised the people of Trinidad and Tobago to the extent of $1.7 billion. And they want to come here today and talk about they acting in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What is happening now at Petrotrin is no different from the cost overruns that landed us at $19 billion in cost overruns, and the government trying to convince the people of Trinidad and Tobago that they're acting in their best interests. Nothing, Madam President, nothing is further from the truth. Madam President, these documents that let me go to another document here, Madam President. This company called McKinsey, that if I could use the words, and let me not go into the vernacular, that has taken $68 million from Trinidad and Tobago, right? This company was writing, Petrotrin was writing to this company, McKinsey. And on the 12th of September 2018, this was telling McKinsey, they wanted McKinsey's position. We are the people who paying for the reports, you know. We paying for the advice. The people of Trinidad and Tobago fork out $68 million for this. But Mr. Espine, Mr. Arjun Singh, Renal Arjun Singh, Ajura Singh, I apologize. Ajura Singh is writing to McKinsey. What he's asking McKinsey? we also wish to take this opportunity to seek your approval to make verbal disclosure of the results of McKinsey's consulting services herein, consisting of helping Petrotrin to reorganize and refinance and manage the transition from thrive to growth phase, and the potential strategic steps required to get there. And listen to this part, Madam President. To the named government officials in Appendix C, here too. You know, in Appendix C, Madam President, the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Office of the Prime Minister's Address.
Get permission to give the PM.
The Honorable Stuart Young, Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. The Honorable Colm Imbert, Minister of Finance. Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan. Senator the Honorable David Small. And Senator the Honorable, again, Colm Imbert, MP and Chairman of the Joint Select Committee on Energy Affairs and the Joint Select Committee on Energy Affairs and the Joint Select Committee on Energy Affairs. Madam President, you know what I find real disturbing about this? Is that these matters are legal matters that concern the welfare and the public interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Under our government, there's an Attorney General in the person of the Honorable MP for San Fernando West, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi. And the question I want to ask the Minister is this. Under the Constitution, Section 76, isn't it the Attorney General who has the responsibility to advise the Cabinet? Isn't it the Attorney General to give advice to the government? This is perhaps the most important piece of what I would call the most important legal matter that is going on right now in this country concerning over 10,000 people. And perhaps when you get up to reply, the Honorable Minister of Energy and Energy Industries will tell us why it is the Attorney General, right, is not seeing these documents. Why are you leaving out the Attorney General out of this?
Interesting.
Why he's not being told about all the reports that McKinsey providing? He's the person with responsibility, cabinet responsibility. So I don't know, Madam President, it baffles me how this cabinet operates. But that's probably why, Madam President, we will know what's going on in the cabinet, outside the cabinet, and in the boardroom down at Petrotrin. We have no doubt about that. But it's a very, very disturbing thing, Madam President, that the cabinet of this country runs in the manner that it is set out here. But you know, one thing that I found very, very interesting, Madam President, is that these people, McKinsey, have become so familiar. It's such a sweetheart deal that is going down with this 68 million and the more to come, the 4.2 million to come. You know, in these documents, Madam President, you know how these people refer to the chairman of Petrotrin? In official correspondence passing between the parties? They refer to him by Wilfred. We are happy to work with you. Right? So I don't know. They're on first name basis. McKinsey and Company is on first name basis with the chairman of Petrotrin. And it's not any wonder, Madam President, why. Here, let me read it out so that they don't think that, you know, Ramdeen just saying so for saying so sake. The last and penultimate paragraph of the document where Petrotrin is going to pay out another, probably about 12 million to McKinsey and Company. This is what the document ends by saying. Wilfred, we are excited to support you through this critical transition phase of Petrotrin. We look forward to discussing and refining this outline proposal with you and other board members as appropriate. You see, Madam President, all of this just doesn't add up. And you know why it doesn't add up, Madam President? I'll tell you why. When this government decided that they will...
Senator Ramdeen, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. When this government decided that they would take these very drastic measures with respect to Petrotrin, this same government set up a committee called the Lashley Committee. And why we keep asking for disclosure of the reports is because I will stand here today and I bet, Madam President, that in the reply of anybody from the government, we will not be told today of one report by one advisor who advised this government in writing that it should shut down the refinery. Not one. Not McKinsey, not Solomon, not Riley, not one. So, why don't you tell us where you got this idea? Who came up with this idea? Because you see that lady that I referred to, Madam President, in that board note, called Miss Lisa Ali, who this company that was paid over $3 billion to recruit. You know what is really going on at Petrotrin, Madam President? What is really going on at Petrotrin is that this individual called Robert Riley is restaffing Petrotrin with all the people who were working at BP before. So Petrotrin is like a new version of BP. That is what is going on. And being paid $450,000 plus to do that. So tell us who hired Riley. Tell us what Riley is being paid to do. Tell us the decisions. Every time the Petrotrin board has to have a press conference down there with the executive management, is Riley doing it? They're flying him in from London. Let us know.
Dean, please. I have spoken in the past about when we speak about persons who are not part of the chamber. If you're speaking about someone, please address them. Please call them by their proper name.
Sorry, Madam President. Madam President, the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to know what is the role being played by Mr. Robert Riley in this entire Petrotrin debacle. Madam President, the government has not told the country what is going to happen to these 5,322 workers from Petrotrin after Friday. I have met with people from Petrotrin who have worked 30 years in Petrotrin, and when Friday reached, you know what they're walking away with? They're walking away with $22,000 after working for 30 years at Petrotrin. And the Minister of Finance, you know, what is insulting about this, Madam President, is I read an article in the newspaper where the government was telling people that the average that somebody is going to be paid at Petrotrin is $500,000. Madam President, that is simply not true. And what are you trying to sell to the population when after Friday you have real people enduring real suffering, right, in Trinidad and Tobago, and you want to peddle this kind of misinformation in the public domain to convince the country of what? There are people who do not know after Friday how they're going to pay their mortgages. There are people who are going to wait 14 years until they reach 50 who are working at Petrotrin now to get their gratuity in 14 years and then receive a pension in 14 years of $3,000. Madam President, what is going to be the value of $3,000 in 14 years' time to those people? And the government is proud about this. But I will say this, Madam President. You see this opposition? This opposition will fight this government on this Petrotrin issue tooth and nail. I have already met with the Petrotrin workers, Madam President. And by the hook or the crook, we will go to court. And you see that pension plan? Nobody will be denied the benefit that they have accrued by paying money into that Petrotrin plan by this PNM government, Madam President. So, as I end, Madam President, I know that this government will not come clean with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is not their character. It is not in their DNA. But what I can tell the Petrotrin workers, the people of all of Trinidad and Tobago who are going to be affected by this decision is whole strain. Whole strain. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not the 4 companies that the PNM are setting up. It's not Guaracara and Paria and Heritage. It's not Legacy. The people of Trinidad and Tobago who are going to suffer after Friday, they will get their day too. They will get their day, and they will use their finger to get rid of this government and the hardship that they have invoked and they have to endure as a result of the PNM. Madam President, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this motion, and I beg to move.
Someone needs to second the motion.
Madam President, I stand to second the motion and reserve my time to speak.
The motion has been seconded by Senator Amin. Honourable Senators, I will now propose the question for debate. The question is, Whereas the Board of Petrotrin announced on August 28, 2018, that the company's refinery will cease its crude oil refining operations. And whereas the Prime Minister on September 2, 2018, confirmed that the Cabinet had accepted a recommendation of the Petrotrin Board to close its refinery. And whereas it is evident that the decision of the government was without stakeholder consultation and with little or no disclosure to the public. And whereas the decision to close the Petrotrin refinery will have direct adverse consequences on thousands of persons, as well as on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that the Senate take note of the failure of the government to disclose a viable and credible plan to address the needs of those persons, businesses affected by the closure of the refinery. And be it further resolved that the Senate condemn the actions of the government in closing the Petrotrin refinery. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I came here to debate this motion, and you have just read it out, so I wouldn't bother to repeat. But nothing Senator Ramdin said could be linked directly to the recitals of the motion. He came here in his normal style to supposedly boss mark on certain costs and certain contracts, which I will attempt to explain. Petrotrin paid taxes. We paid McKinsey $60-something million. Certain people were recruited in questionable circumstances, he claimed. There's a BP takeover of Petrotrin, and a lot of spurious allegations that cannot be justified in fact. But, Madam President, I want to, since this Petrotrin matter came up, every time I come to the Senate or I go to the House, it's a series of questions. Urgent questions, questions on notice. It's matters on the adjournment. It is matters on private motion. It is substantive matters in law, in legislation. It's par for the courts. We accept that. I will deal with that shortly. The issue was being said in the motion that with little or no disclosure to the public. I just want to indicate that as far back as January 2017, the Prime Minister, in an address to the nation, he didn't give this Christmas message. He told me not giving the Christmas message that year. He said he will speak to the nation in January, and he will speak on Petrotrin. It is the first time in my life I saw a Prime Minister had an address to the nation during a holiday season on one specific matter. That is how grave the situation was and is. The document is here. It's 32 pages long, his speech, and every single line pertained to Petrotrin. He put the nation on notice that things were not well in the state of Denmark. There were grave issues, systemic issues that needed to be addressed to save Petrotrin and to save Trinidad, not the company, to save the legacy of the oil industry and the local oil industry. This is not about Petrotrin, you know. This is about an issue that went horribly wrong. And today it is not my duty to say it's P&M fault, it's UNC fault, it's Mr. Jupiter fault, it's Mr. Espini fault, it's Mr. Lindsay Gillett fault, and all the past chairmen, Malcolm Jones, you call them. They were all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, in their own right, feeling they were making a contribution. They made blunders. I think nobody deliberately pushed Petrotrin down the chute. These are men of integrity. They made blunders because in the changing energy environment, you're dealing with a highly complex industry. And if you do not have the expertise available to you to make the right decision and not to cloud your decision with politics. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the bill. It is as brutal as that. We cannot be in a situation where you just keep hemorrhaging money. And I will show you why the Minister of Finance had to intervene, because he said Petrotrin is a ward of the Ministry of Finance. We have no problem in fixing hospitals, in building schools, in building infrastructure. But you cannot continue ad infinitum to throw money into a black hole that you had no hope of recovery. Okay. Let me take it from the top. I have a chart in my hand. I didn't ask the President for permission, but it's just a flow chart showing you how Petrotrin evolved. It started with Shell, started with Texaco, it started with BP. Shell and Texaco had refineries. Shell's refinery was in Point Fortin. Texaco's refinery was in Pointe-à-Pitre. BP became Trinidad to Sur, a company which I started in. And when these big multinationals, Shell, Texaco, and BP, three of the largest oil companies in the world, they moved out of Trinidad, just as Tate and Lyle moved out of Trinidad. And the PNM formed Caroni 1975 Limited. The state saw it necessary to save the industry by acquiring the assets of these companies. Luckily, around that time, there was something called the Arab oil embargo, and oil prices went up. Things were good. But during the phase of nationalization, we ended up with an integrated oil company. Integrated oil company means you're in all aspects of the value chain: exploration and production, transportation, refining and marketing, and trading. The Point Fortin refinery was shut down, and refinery was integrated at Pointe-à-Pitre. Then there was two companies, one called Trintop, one called Trintopec. They were merged in 1992, I think, to form Petrotrin. And for a while, as the senator said, Petrotrin did fairly well, but there were structural weaknesses in the organization. And one of the things about this energy sector that can cloud structural weaknesses is high oil prices. So when prices are high, you could do what you want, you will make money, because it is called a windfall profit. So here what was happening in Petrotrin. Senator Ramdeen went to Tong and said, oh, so much money was paid in supplemental petroleum tax. Because supplemental petroleum tax is a windfall profit tax when oil prices are high. And the exploration and production division is taxed separately to refining. So when you see the consolidated accounts of Petrotrin, it is not as lucrative as the exploration and production department accounts. And that's where the taxes were paid. But at the end of the day, your bottom line is what counts, because that's what goes to the bank. The other figures are just for taxation purposes. So you could find yourself paying high taxes and not making lucrative profits in the consolidated accounts. So when oil prices fell, because he spoke up to 2009, 2010, 2010 to 2015, they were laughing to the bank, you know. Oil prices $98, $100. They spend and they squander all. And here we are today, struggling to make it right. What it showed when we analyze Petrotrin is not that the PNM wicked. It's not that we're evil. It's not that we don't like people. But there are certain realities that you have to confront as a responsible government. he spoke about, the senator spoke about Lashley report. I'll deal with that shortly. And the whole issue of Robert Riley. But at the end of the day, Petrotrin was a very complex organization. Its tentacles were far and wide and deep in the community. It touched every aspect of life in the southwestern peninsula and in South Trinidad. But at the end of the day, the company's balance sheet gave no hope. When we continue to analyze post the Lashley report, 3 scenarios evolved. Scenario 1, listen to this, to maintain the status quo would require an injection of $25 billion over 5 years, and the company will continue to sustain a loss of $2 billion per annum. Where can the $25 billion from? You're already up to your nose in debt, $13 billion. You can't pay. The Minister of Finance had to scramble to help you get funding. Scenario 2, investment in the operational efficiency of both upstream and downstream, which is refinery and exploration operation, would require an injection of $18 billion. Reasonable. However, the company will continue to sustain losses as the gains by the exploration production side of the business will be offset by losses in the refinery. So what this indicated is that even though you invest in the refinery and you re-energize capital into the company, it's only exploration and production will make a profit. And the refinery will continue to lose. What went wrong with the refinery? I've
Minister, give way for a question.
No, let me talk. Because I have a story to tell. No. I have a lot to tell because when you explain things to you all, you only hear what you want to hear. You know? Okay? And you put your own spin on it.
Yes.
So we were in this position. The refining business had no hope. And let me just trace you through the refinery. In the 80s, just before Texaco sold that refinery, the refinery throughput capacity, right now, before it was shut down last month, was 150,000 barrels per day. In the heyday of Texaco, the refinery throughput was a staggering 350,000 to 400,000 barrels per day. Why? Because it was designed to service the fuel oil market on the eastern seaboard of America and the Caribbean. As were all the refineries in the region. For those of you who could remember, who of you who are old enough, Aruba had a big refinery. Curaçao had a big refinery. St. Croix had a big refinery. Where are they now? Most, if not all, has been shut down. What Trinidad attempted to do, and the rationale was there, but as a country we failed, was to upgrade the refinery. The gas optimization plan, the Prime Minister spoke about it, cost overrun of $10 billion. Still didn't do the job it was supposed to do. We were poor project managers. The whole GTL plant, $2 billion cost overrun. And the now theme of Senator Ramley's discussion, the ultra-low sulfur. We in litigation, arbitration, claim and counterclaim, and lawyers could tell you all kind of things. If you speak to Samsung lawyers, They will tell you the claim is good. They never want you to settle out of court, you know. They never want you to settle out of court. Am I right, Senator Vera? Oh, God. Okay. They will tell you have a case, fight it. Petrotrin lawyers will tell you have a case, fight it. And then the mediators will have to come in and say, hey, guys, settle out of court, sit down, rationalize this thing, and let's come to a settlement. It's been there too long. So we had the ultra-low sulfur. And after all that, we still virtually at ground zero. Added to which, Madam President, is in 2020, something called MARPOL will be coming into effect, which means that even ships where we now sell our bunker fuel in and our fuel oil has a 0.5% sulfur requirement or less. There is no way that the Petrotrin refinery could have produced fuel with less than 0.5% sulfur. So that market would have disappeared come 2020. And you have had to dump your fuels, no offense meant, in Africa and some of these other third world countries to get a sale, where the environmental conditions are not internationally at extremely low prices. So scenario number 3 was what we took. We form a holding company. We're not getting out of the oil business, you know. And I will show you how that is so significant. We form a holding company to hold all the assets. And we form 3 new subsidiaries. And Petrotrin, which will be the legacy company for legacy items. Heritage, exploration and production, for exploration and production operations. Karakara refining, something to house the refinery asset as we go out to the international market for a bidder. And Paria trading and terminaling for trading. That keeps us in the game. And I will deal with exploration and production, because that's my field. And to show you how that is such a good idea. Scenario 3 requires a lower capital injection of the order of $8 billion. The E&P company, listen to this, will provide positive cash flows that will cover the full Petrotrin existing debt. Because you take out the cancer, you know. The cash flow from exploration and production will cover the full Petrotrin existing debt. So E&P will now pay through time all the debt as we retire the refinery. But all is not lost to the refinery. Because one of the problems with our refinery was we were losing $2 to $5 US per barrel on every barrel of oil we refined. We were importing 100,000 barrels to put into the refinery. So you're taking scarce foreign exchange, importing 100,000 barrels a day at $80 a barrel, $70 a barrel, to lose $5 on each barrel you import. You've saved that. But somebody out there may have a source of crude. They may have their own markets. And there's an asset that has value. And they will now make a bid to the government and say, we can use this refinery, we can lease it, we can buy it, we can work some arrangement where the state of Trinidad and Tobago can still get some monetary reward for an asset that otherwise will have no value. It is as simple as that. And now we go to the exploration and production part. Madam President, when do I finish? Well, to have time on, yeah. The exploration and production, it's good business, and I'll explain why. First and foremost, I always say, people doesn't listen to me much when I say it, but oil is still better business than gas. As lucrative as gas has been to Trinidad, oil is better business than gas for 3 reasons. Actually 4. First and foremost, we have a more robust tax structure for oil. It includes royalties, what is called PPT, Petroleum Profits Tax, and SPT, which is Supplemental Petroleum Tax. Secondly, we've made no secret that we think Trinidad is being cheated of the true value of its gas resources because of transfer pricing coming out of LNG. We have gone public on that. No, but we're working on it. These are the very negotiations we wanted to start, all the saying we can't negotiate with BP and Shell. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It is better business because it has that issue. So, but oil prices are internationally referenced price. You cannot cheat you on oil, so to speak. You cannot hide value in oil. So every barrel of crude you sell is referenced against an international benchmark crude. The very said UNC was telling us Molo crude, which is the Trinidad crude, has very little value. We showed in our first 3 shipments that it was sold for WTI, which is the international reference price, plus $2 or $3.
How much did you get? $56?
The reference price plus 3.
The actual price, $56 or $57?
So, Senator Wika, here's the story. You'll get to make your presentation.
You'll get to make your presentation. And as a young man, listen and learn. Okay? So,
Senators, let me just make an intervention here. Please let us abide by the standing orders and listen to the minister while remaining silent. Minister, continue.
So you have a more robust taxation system, and your product is referenced against an international standard. Thirdly, most importantly, in terms of the very issue they want to bring up, is that unlike gas wells, and let me just tell you something different between oil wells and gas wells. Gas wells produce trouble-free for its entire life. So you see all those gas platforms offshore, they are all unmanned, operated by SCADA systems. Oil wells are different. Oil wells need servicing periodically. So the service sector benefits much more fundamentally and significantly from oil production than from gas production. A gas well will produce trouble-free for 10 years. An oil well, 6 months to a year, you have to do something called a workover to clean it out and do these sorts of things. So what was happening at Petrotrin is because the refinery was hemorrhaging so much of money, they were taking the value from exploration and production, the cash flow generated by exploration and production, and sinking it into the refinery. So the exploration and production department was now starved of cash. So here you had a situation in Trinidad with Petrotrin producing 60% of the nation's crude, Trinma and on land. For the last year and a half, Petrotrin hasn't had 1 rig drilling. You cannot be in the oil business and don't drill oil wells. You cannot be in the exploration and production business and don't work over wells. And who does that? Service companies, drilling companies like well services and all these local entities that are very good in what they do. There are a tremendous amount of small workover contractors in the Southwest Peninsula. that has no work. Because Petrotrin was generating no work. Petrotrin was just paying people to monitor their existing production, which, by the way, declines naturally at 10% per annum. So if you do nothing, and you produce 40,000 barrels this year, you do nothing, production will drop by 4,000 barrels the next year. That is called natural decline of the reservoirs. So here you are in a position where you have a chance to re-energize the whole oil field operation of the Southwest Peninsula. So through you, Madam President, this is extremely good news for the people of Santa Flora, of Palo Seco, of Guapo, of Point Fortin, of Faizabad, of Forest Reserve, of Siparia, all over the Southwest. That is what will create the jobs. And that is where the new capital will be injected.
You don't want to hear that.
Petrotrin, through you, Madam President, sits on a staggering 160 million barrels of recoverable oil. Let me repeat that to you, Madam President. Petrotrin sits as we speak on 160 million barrels of recoverable oil. But it takes investment to produce it. There's something called secondary recovery, where when your reservoirs get old, you enhance the reservoir pressure to bring out more oil. Steam flooding. Petrotrin hasn't done that for years. There's not new technology, but the improved technology today is CO2 flooding. And here how this is so good for us. Carbon dioxide flooding is what you call carbon capture. We, through chimneys in Point Lisas, blow millions of metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We've signed on to Paris Accord. We have to cut that by 20% by 2023. So the plan is you capture the carbon, the CO2, at Point Lisas. You pipe it down to Forest Reserve, inject it into the old wells, and produce more oil. What better synergy you could want than that? Then there's exploration. We sit on a tremendous asset in Trinma, especially a field called Southwest Soldado. Companies lining up to find out if you want to put it on the market, you know, because it has tremendous potential. It is on trend with some major Venezuelan oil fields. And there is something now called OBN seismic, which is offshore ocean bottom nodes seismic. And I speak to my doctor friend here, Dr. Diyal Singh, and is there another doctor down there? What has changed medicine? Imaging. When I was a little boy, you go, hey, doctor, you take a torchlight and he put it in your eye. I didn't know what he was doing that for. We'll put it in your ears. But he was looking at some capillary here that he may deduce you have a tumor or something like that. Now, there are doctors who cannot diagnose you without a CT scan or MRI because the imaging technology has made the job easier. What seismic technology that has transformed the energy sector is imaging the subsurface of the earth. So in other words, you give an X-ray or MRI of the human body for medicine, you shoot a seismic survey, and it images you what exists underground. And that now has made exploration a less risky business. So the chances are now, when you drill a well with those technology, your chances of success is significantly higher than in the past. But what you need is two things. Capital, three things: technology and the human brain. which now includes software. And that is the type of organization we're going to attempt to build in heritage. We have produced so many scholars in this country over the last 2 decades. We have some of the brightest engineers, subsurface geoscientists, geologists, geophysicists, reservoir engineers, petroleum engineers, chemical engineers. We have to let them loose because they are akora with the technology. And we have to build the leadership and the environment for it to blossom. Good? And it calls for leadership. It calls for international connection. Because, again, you cannot get too insular with the energy sector, you know. It's a global industry. You cannot operate in a cocoon, you know, because it will go on past you. So you need the mixing of talent. We cannot take the position that there should be no expatriate here. We mustn't have too many of them for the sake of protecting our national legacy. But however, it's important that we have that synergy with the international market, with the international technologists, with the companies who can provide the service that you want. And through you, Madam President, in this business, everything costs money. This is not a business for charity. It is a business where companies and people know the value that they bring, and they demand a good price for their service. You take it or you leave it. You take it, there's a consequence, because you have people like Senator Ramdin will come and quote all kind of figures in isolation, not understanding what the market forces are. You leave it at your own peril. And that is the state of play. That is what this government is trying to do. That is what we have to transform and get out of the historical cocoon that the energy sector left us. Let me give a good example. When Texaco and Shell was here, there were no hospitals in Trinidad, you know. So they opened their own hospitals. There was no Palmis or Westmoreland for the senior staff to live. So they built camps. Forest Reserve, Pointe-à-Pierre, Point Fortin, Clifton Hill, Beach Camp. And in those days, to operate in the oil field, you must live close to the job. Because you know why? They didn't have this. Today, you can monitor a drilling rig from Houston and change the parameters on your computer screen. So the necessity for camps are now irrelevant. It was a status symbol in the days when I worked in the energy sector. When you live in Beach Camp or you live in Pointe-à-Pierre, you're walking with your shoulders high. Your children went to private schools, company schools. The medical facilities were there for you. You had the housing. All those things are no longer relevant with today's technology and today's cost structure and work programs. You have to accept that. And there are people who want to protect that because they have a vested interest in it. So we are inching our way out of the old paradigm. We will create a new organization that will bring value to Trinidad and Tobago. It will create high-quality employment, in particular for young scholars, for young engineers, for young analysts, for a whole cadre of intellect. The world today is ideas-driven, you know. The intellectual capacity, there's telemetry, there's everything now that if you cannot go on and log on, you're not in the business anymore. Long ago, oil field was about pipe fitting and oil iron. Today, I have to approve work permits for energy sector workers coming into Trinidad. And I have grown up in the industry. What time did I finish now? Quarter to. I'll give one last example. For foreigners coming into work on drilling rigs, we have a lot of drilling rigs offshore. Tool pushers is a skill that we do. I know Trinidad has a lot of tool pushers. So the last rig here, which is called the Invectus, which is the deep water drill ship that is drilling for BHP. When they came, I saw a fairly extended list of foreign tool pushers. So I queried it. And I said, this is the most modern rigs in the world, coming into Trinidad to drill. I said, well, I can't approve this. When they took me on the rig, and the situation was explained to me, to do anything onto the rig, to move a pipe, to put weight on bit, anything like that, you have to log on. You have to know the software which the rig operates in. It's almost like remote sensing. It's almost like artificial intelligence. So the entire skill sets that the Trinidadian tool pusher had coming through the last couple of decades has vanished. He has to be retrained. It's not that he's stupid, you know.
Minister, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. He has to be retrained. And that is the whole transformation process that we are going into. And I'm going to deal with the BP matter now. Trinidad is fortunate. We have our challenges with BP and Shell and BHP and EOG. We're dealing with that. But we have to consider ourselves fortunate that we have 3 of the top energy companies in the world operating in Trinidad. The only one we're missing is ExxonMobil, and they're right in Guyana now. Okay? ExxonMobil is the world's largest, followed by Shell, followed by BP. BHP is coming up, I think 5th or 6th. They have provided opportunities for Trinidadians over the last several decades. They have Trinidadians in BP in Azerbaijan. They have Trinidadians in Shell in Mozambique, in Angola. They have Trinidadians in Dubai. They have Trinidadians in Qatar. I was in Qatar earlier this year with Qatar Petrotrin, which is probably the biggest state company outside of Saudi Aramco. And in the meeting we had was Trini leading the team for QP, Qatar Petroleum. We have been fortunate. So if today, no, listen to me, to you, Madam President. So if today, former BP executives who served at the highest level in the BP organization is now willing to come and serve their country, what is so wrong with that? Good? They're retired. They take a consultancy. Some of them do it gratis. Some of them do it under cost because they have the corporate experience. And at that level, how much degrees you have doesn't matter, you know. You have to have a CV and a track record that shows a profile of leadership, and you know what to do to transform an organization. So if you say BP has taken over the company, well, I say so be it. So be it. Because the fact of the matter is that you need a set of some skill sets that has to catapult us ahead. Okay? Who are former BP employees? They are Trinidadians. They are Trinidadian national. If you're in medicine and some guy is a top surgeon out of Baylor or University of Houston, and he comes back to Trinidad, you have to open your arms and welcome him. And we have to stop this insularity. But who is PNM and who is UNC, and who is Indian and who is African and who is Chinese? And understand that we are all Trinidadians. We are all in this thing together. The government has come up with a plan that we think will transform the indigenous state oil sector And I really, really want to take this opportunity to you, Madam President, to recommend the Petrotrin transformation plan and the new plan that we have put for Petrotrin and the state oil sector, that you give us your support as we continue along a journey of progress. I thank you.
Senator Sipasad.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senators, for the opportunity to contribute. When all is said and done, Madam President, it is the employees, dependents, and other stakeholders who will directly experience the brunt of the hardships arising from a loss of a steady income or wage, notwithstanding the various benefits which they will receive from Petrotrin. Bearing this in mind, Madam President, it will be most beneficial if this House can agree to request Petrotrin to provide positive post-retrenchment support, such as things like financial skills training. This involves investment management, debt management, budgeting, retirement planning, training, including retraining and skills upgrading, entrepreneurship, job search assistance, including things like resume writing, counseling, because people are going to be traumatized, suggestions for new businesses, and I could go on because the list is not exhaustive, and we can add to it. The point, though, is to provide meaningful assistance to the displaced so that their lives are not unduly disrupted and they can continue to be productive citizens and not join the ranks of the unemployed and disenchanted. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam President.
Fire up.
If BP takes over
No big thing.
the commanding heights of the economy, in the words of the Honorable Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, so be it. We have returned to the days of the plantation. Massa days are alive and well, to the detriment of the people of Trinidad. Madam President, Lloyd Best must be turning in his grave.
He's no longer up yet.
Madam President, let me start by congratulating Senator Ramdeen on this very important motion.
Excellent presentation.
On my way home to Point 14 last night, I took a detour through Pointe-à-Pierre to drop a friend of mine. And, Madam President, if you would count the number of vehicles, if you were able to count the number of vehicles, I don't think the car park in the Queen's Park Savannah and the National Stadium could accommodate them. And there was a rally there by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And in essence, what they were saying is that this government has been the most deceptive government with respect to managing or mismanaging the resources of this Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, let's establish a chain of understanding. At the commanding heights of the economy, once you do that well, or in this case, if you fumble it, bungle it, and mismanage it as this government has been doing, it significantly negatively affects business confidence. And I will deal with some particular aspects of business confidence. It also has a negative impact on the investment climate. Because, of course, if business confidence is low, who would be attracted to invest, particularly locally? That is why we are in the fourth year of this government, and the Minister of Trade, the Honorable Minister of Trade, had nothing to present to this Parliament in a contribution to the budget. In fact, the entire contribution was about a trade policy yet to be established after having been warned about that since the beginning of this year by myself, Madam President. So the investment climate will be down. economic activity will struggle. Gross capital formation, business creation, and job creation would be hamstrung. And the final rung, once you mismanage at the top, the commanding heights of the economy, social peace goes out the window. Madam President, the disturbing points I want to deal with from the Honorable Minister's presentation. The Minister made reference to $25 billion and $18 billion. And when challenged as to whether this came from the Lashley report, the response was no. When further questioned as to where is the source of it, there was a deafening silence coming back from the minister. Madam President, after hearing this figure from the government for the past two months, one has to conclude that this is a figment of the imagination of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of the PNM. And it's fake news, if to use their words. 25 billion is fake news. Because there's no information to back up what they are saying, there's no report, there's nothing to substantiate what they have been saying all this time. Especially since the minister said it's not from the Lashley report. So, Madam President, another point I want to also say that is false again from the Honorable Minister's presentation is that the exploration and production returns will take care of Petrotrin's debts. That is totally false. Because if that were the case, then Heritage Petroleum would have taken over the $850 million US bond. Yeah. And the remaining balance on the amortized bond, which will be repaid at 2022, which is at $250 million at the moment. US. So Heritage would have taken over that if, in fact, exploration and production could handle what, in fact, is really happening. So this is not about pulling wool over the people of Trinidad and Tobago or wise. What is really happening is the taxpayers of this country will have to foot that bill when it falls due. So another point I want to also rebut, the Honorable Minister said that this development is good news. And he quoted a figure, 160 million barrels of recoverable oil. Madam President, in energy economics, one has to categorize your reserves of oil as possible, probable, and proven. Possible has the lowest percentage of being extracted at the point of audit. Probable is about 50%, and then proven means it's about 90% possible. You'll get it.
Teach them.
But the minister chose to hide, to scurry behind the word recoverable. I apologize. I retract that word. I apologize.
Recoverable means proven, but you don't know. I know what it
So, Madam President, the Honorable Minister is trying now to correct his speech, to recover.
Take an exploitation on Petrotrin.
So don't hide. Say the facts. If it is proven, I think the minister would have said that. Yeah. So I'm saying it is false. That is false. Unless they come and correct the record officially based on the terminology that we are accustomed to in the industry. All right? So another point he said that this is good news for Santa Flora, Palo Seco, Point 14. But I want to say something. This has not been good news for one Mr. Anthony Akwi, who, after working a decade in the fields in Trinidad, has his house broken down. Was that good news? He can't get medical care now from Saturday. The health centers, the 7 health centers. So we have Augustus Long, but they also have 7 health centers throughout the country. The health center in Point 14 in Trinidad is better equipped based on the resources they get from Petrotrin in a financial nature than the Point 14 Area Hospital. I went to the Point 14 Area Hospital just this Sunday with a dread headache. You know what the man tell me? 2 things. I asked for some water. He said, we don't have any cups here. So don't think that because you're who you are, we blank in your cup. We don't get money to buy cups. One. The second thing, the equipment you have to use to give them the testing. They say wash it out and give it back. We have to use it. We don't have money to buy the next one. Madam President. That is the point 14 year hospital. So you want to get all the thousands of persons now who cannot access the health center in Trin Mabis coming now to jam up in Clifton Hill with this point 14 year hospital. Woe be unto the people of the Southwest Peninsula under this PNM government. So Mr. Aki has his house broken down. He is now going to be denied access to the very good health care he has access to at the Petrotrin health centers, and one of which is in Forest Reserve, I believe. Then, of course, he lost his job. So he can't even pay for gas to put in his car. The price has risen to come to Port of Spain to complain. And the last part is he cannot get a job because he is being excluded from the new arrangement. You know why, Madam President? Because he didn't work in BP. Because as the minister said, if BP were to take over, so be it. So Mr. Aki has to tell his children, I can't give you food for Christmas. So be it. They are emasculating the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam President. Now, the level of diagnosis that the minister alluded to, it was, while humorous, it tended to VAPS. I wanted to say magic, but it's really VAPS. And that VAPS, there's only one other doctor that operates by such VAPS, and that is the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Madam President, when the minister did not mandate, what was disturbing, the minister is very good at being a historian. So, I think the University of the West Indies and Professor Beckles would definitely do well to look into tapping some of his knowledge.
You can lecture history in 2020.
Yes. But post-2020 will be very good.
Yes.
He'll need a new job. But, Madam President, the issue that I take here with the story also speaks to another part that has resulted from this fallout. Wilfred Espini has been on record as saying that the workers in Petrotrin lack the skills. The Honorable Minister, however, unfortunately, also agreed to that, being the sole person required to approve work permits. One would have thought that two things would have been done, Madam President. Two things. One, the Honorable Minister would have quietly reprimanded the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Energy for not supporting the work of the National Energy Skills Centers and reopening the skills centers in Point Fortin, in Palo Seco, and in Moruga, and upskilling the skills centers, the drilling program in St. Madeleine, in Point Lisas, in Vestany, and so on. One would have thought that the Honorable Minister would have taken BP to task and say, okay, if this is the level of technology that we must have in our skills development program, then we will give you the work permit on this condition. You must take 1 apprentices per area that we are short in. 1, because these are skilled professionals.
Who said that wasn't done?
The minister didn't say that was done. The minister said, unfortunately, he had no choice but to give the work permits. So therefore, in fact, it was not done. The other thing is, so that should have happened. But this is me thinking as a policy maker, Madam President. The policy should have been any company coming into Trinidad and Tobago in the energy sector, henceforth, where there is a skill area where we don't have we can't meet the criteria to ensure there's proper local participation in the energy sector, mandate them to first give us the right to have apprentices, and also mandate them to come to our skills acquisition centers at the NESC, at the MIC, at HYPE, MILAT, wherever, to make sure the skills sets are translated. So, however, Madam President, the people of Trinidad and Tobago will have to wait for a government to be led by Kamala Prasad Bisesa to achieve this. So, Madam President, I want to turn to the message I wanted to bring today. However, I was sidelined a bit because I had to address the lack of policy making that I observed coming from the government. There's a timeline I want to remind persons of. There was a time in August that the government was saying 1,700 persons will be going. Only 1,700.
Prime Minister says so,
Only 1,700 persons, Madam President. So since we got accustomed to roughly the same figure going home from ArcelorMittal and Centron and whoever the satellite companies in steel, people say, okay, well, the economy didn't collapse. People going home. The rest will be okay. OWTU was shouting from the rooftops, here's what, everybody's going home. They said since then, it's 9,000. 28th of August, that happened. They came back and said it's 2,600. There was some confusion. Then on the 16th of September, we heard 3,500. Then on the 18th of September, in an interview, the president, the chairman of Petrotrin, Wilfred Espini, then uttered those infamous words, all. So we know that at that time he told us 4,700. Now we know it's 5,322.
After they relapsed.
So,
never relapsed.
So, Madam President, that is the timeline that we must remind ourselves of. And why do we remind ourselves of this? It speaks at the heart of this motion. Because, Madam President, this motion talks about little or no disclosure to the public. This motion talks about the adverse effects of thousands of persons and on the economy. This motion, Madam President, speaks to one main thing: lack of transparency and the deception of this whole deal. So when one looks at a timeline where their government, August 28, remember the date, Madam President, and the Prime Minister would stand in this Parliament, in the other place, and say that in August they hired Wiley, not Riley. The name begins with a W. Now let's not be confused. They sound the same, but it's totally different. Hired Wiley. They would have been clear, very clear, at that time that everyone was going home. In fact, if one were to be a conspiracy theorist, which I don't think I am, but if one were to be a conspiracy theorist, one would say that June the 19th was the date that this decision was cast in stone. Why that date, Madam President? That was the date that the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, was given a failing grade at Charlie King Junction by the leader, the President General of the OWTU at the Labor Day parade. On the economy, fail. Healthcare, fail. Education, fail. National security, fail. Dealing with the workers, fail. And in the words of our esteemed former Prime Minister, when you oppose him, he opposes you vigorously. And should you continue, the rest that our Prime Minister said is now history.
Members, Senator Obika, there is a standing order, and you all are very well aware of it. And I would ask you to curtail the kind of comments you're making now. Senator Obika, please continue, but desist from imputing improper motives and desist from those sort of disparaging remarks, okay? To that extent.
I thank you very much, Madam President. So June the 19th is the date I want persons to remember. Let's go to a different story. let's go to a story. So as we were to stick a pin, as the Attorney General would say, although he never returned to the pin. Let's go to the social expenditure in times of declining revenue. This, Madam President, is from an article by Melanie Richards, dated July the 6th, 2018, and it's from the Energy Chamber's website. Okay? So, in this article, it speaks to information regarding the Extractive Industries Initiative report. And they show you social expenditure of the big energy players in Trinidad and Tobago, the upstream companies, the BPTT, the NGC, the BG Shell, Petrotrin, Repsol, Perenco, BHP, EOG Resources. And Madam President, it may interest you to know that in 2012, Petrotrin spent nearly $10 million on social expenditure. 2013, 12.8. 2014, 16.1. 2015, 15.3. And 2016, 11.3 million. And 2016, as you would be aware, was the first full calendar year of this government's office. So, Madam President, why do I raise this issue? I raise this issue to point out that even though there have been declining revenues, so to speak, in the energy sector, Petrotrin has always been fulfilling its role as a good corporate citizen regarding social expenditure. What is social expenditure? There are some youths in Marabella, where I spent a lot of time growing up, that if not for a particular steel band foundation, they may not even be with us today. On a particular street, Madam President, you would find it very interesting to know that there's a family that has 3 young men, and all of them were killed as a result of a life of crime. All of them. This is the street that I grew up on in Marabella. And in another household, there are families with similar young men close to this life of crime that were saved, some of them plying their trade as professional pan players of overseas in cruise ships, lecturing at universities. Some of them went on to further their studies as professional players, as teachers in practice. Some of them have gone on to being pan tuners and pan makers, earning foreign exchange for this country. So, Madam President, when you take away, and this band is not officially sponsored by Petrotrin, but practically everything they got is from their sweat, from Petrotrin's sweat, and from taxpayers' dollars. So, if you remove Petrotrin from the equation, this span side and those young people, we are not sure if their stories will be the same. So we must always ask the question, where will this, all these organizations that benefit, so I don't even know about Petrotrin Phase 2, if they've, unless I think they've changed their name, they're now hardcore, I think, or Cats and Jammers, or Buru Singh Tassa, or the Calypso competition, in terms of the junior Calypso competition. There are many organizations that depend on a Petrotrin check for their activities to run. So what will be the impact of that on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago? That question is left a begging, because I'm sure, just as they did not even know how many persons Petrotrin has on their payroll who would be fired, one cannot expect such level of laziness to have also determined what will be the economic impact of the lack of social expenditure of Petrotrin. Madam President, could I ask what time I should end?
4:26.
Thank you very much. So Madam President, as I have dealt with that particular question, I want to now move on to a very important issue in detail, in the substantive issue regarding the health care of the persons in Petrotrin. So So, Madam President, it may interest you to know that from Saturday, the 6,000 retirees of Petrotrin will no longer have access to health care in this country via the system that they have been accustomed to their entire lives. That alone is a travesty. These persons, and if you were to look, there's a memo. I don't have a mailbox to slip it in, but someone had a mailbox, and then it landed on my across my table. It passed across my table, as they said in the public service. And this memo, dated, if you allow me, the 9th of November 2018. So that's very recent, right? That's about 2 weeks ago. States, Petrotrin advised all 3,364 exiting employees through terminational letters. Petrotrin will pay, and I want to read just this paragraph, if you allow.
You have to state the source of your document, the date, and give some info, yeah?
So thank you very much, Madam President. So it's from the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, the Human Resource and Corporate Services Division, HR Subdivision, notes to the board. All right, it's on the status of the Augustus Long Hospital, and it's signed by Executive Director Reynald Adjournment Singh. The memorandum that he would have sent would have been signed by Sharon Morris Cummings, who was the corporate secretary. It says Petrotrin will pay 100% of the cost of the initial, so all of the cost of the initial insurance premiums for a period of 24 months, 2 years, from 2020 November 3rd. As after this period, should you wish continued medical insurance, you'll be responsible to secure your own coverage. This undertaking was reasonably assumed to extend to all eligible retirees, basically 6,000 retirees. So there you have it, Madam President. The first issue I want to raise on this is
after 2 years they're gone.
the first issue. You have retirees, and you know we are living very healthy and long in Trinidad and Tobago. We are living very long lives and very fulfilling lives. People are going back to work. People are rediscovering themselves. Those who decide not to go back to work because they've worked for 30 to 40 years already, they are about experiencing the golden years in a way that they didn't when they had to work. Like so these persons, not like the esteemed persons on the board of Petrotrin, but these persons who have contributed to Trinidad and Tobago are only going to be afforded 24 months coverage, Madam President. If that is not a disrespect, I don't know what is. 24 months of coverage. So can you imagine, you have 24 months of coverage, after which you must now go and seek some form of health insurance. By the time you go to seek this health insurance, you have already predisclosed medical conditions that have rendered you a significant risk factor for any insurer to take your case. So therefore, these persons will have to face very high premiums. And obviously, they are facing a very indefinite end to their pension benefits. Because if one were to take the letter from Republic Bank at face value, one has to assume that their pension benefits can dry up at any time. It can dry up in 24 months. It may dry up after that. However, because the bank has simply raised an alarm and the government has not cleared the air, these pensioners, these 6,000 pensioners, and the 5,000 workers who are also laid off, they have no clue what will happen after, one, their insurance premiums have ended, and two, their pension plan has folded. So these people could be out after having built the foundation of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. They could be out in the cold with not even a sweetie to suck, Madam President. I think that is reprehensible in the least. When one goes on to read the memo, Madam President, there's two other points that are alarming. And one has to do with the eventual company that got through with the bid, and it's all over the news, persons with Sagicor. And the question one has to ask, what was the process that the government engaged in to arrive at Sagicor? Is or are there any persons in the cabinet connected to persons in Sagicor? It's a valid question. I don't know. Are there any persons who are high-ranking government officials who are connected? That's another question that I think the people of Trinidad and Tobago need to answer. Need to know, sorry. Well, they're trying to answer themselves on the radio programs and so. So, Madam President, this is so disturbing that I think I will leave it there because there are other persons who can also go further into that issue. Now, there's another question one want to ask. Where was the request for proposals regarding this issue? Regarding the important issue of the health coverage for over not just 11,000 current employees and retirees. What of the families of these persons? The over 20 to 30,000 people. What will be their position, Madam President? The women who are about to deliver, who have been prepared to deliver, to give birth. The Minister of Health came and spoke about some progress in Sangre Grande. But the Southwest Regional Health Authority, Madam President, I want to submit today will be at a crisis point because most of the health centers that were referenced belong to the Southwest Regional Health Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. And one can only imagine, if you call the names out, you get an idea. And I just want to reference an article that pointed out the exact locations of these health centers. It's from the Newsday, September the 5th, 2018, titled Petrotrin's Augustus Long Hospital to Function as Normal. And it states here, another source close to Petrotrin told Newsday the 50-bed, but it's actually 49-bed based on the government submission, 49-bed hospital caters to at least 20,000 patients annually. The source said the hospital, along with the 7 medical centers located at key Petrotrin installations in South Trinidad, such as Point Fortin, Pointe-a-Pierre, Penal, Santa Flora, Faizabad, Guayari, and Trinma Marine Base will be affected. So we have these areas. These are in the south, and the majority in the southwest. Another question one has to ask, Madam President, is when these 49 beds are taken out of circulation this Saturday, just 82 hours from now, what will be the position in the healthcare system in Trinidad and Tobago?
Crisis.
Would it be as before? Would it be as before where you had to write your name for a simple procedure as hernia and see that your date is 10 years in the future, and you literally wrote down in a book? Because I can remember as a child writing down in the book, seeing the year 2000, and I was in the year 1993. And I thought at that time I would never even live to see that time. It just looked so far away, because I was obviously 10 years old. So, Madam President, is it that we're going to be returning to this when you remove these 49 beds from circulation? Because we know the government has no intention. I'm hearing the Honorable Minister of Public Utilities saying that 49 years is no big deal. But 49 beds is no big deal. But these 49 beds service over 20,000 patients. 20,000, Madam President. So it's not 49 people lying down on beds. It's a hospital facility with 49 beds that services over 20,000 people. So I'm not sure the government understands these things, but clearly they need to be taught that the decisions that they are making affect everyone negatively. Now, Madam President, there are also There's another point I wanted to bring out, because I only have about 6 more minutes remaining. And 5 more minutes remaining, sorry. And there's a point I want to bring out regarding care and duty of care. If the government had opened the Cuba Children's Hospital, the population would have said they cared. But because they have failed to do so, and they are in their 4th year, the next year of their term is an election year. Nothing can happen there. Because if nothing has happened and they're in their 4th year, I don't think anything can happen in their 5th. So they're in their 4th year of their office, and nothing has happened regarding the Cuba Children's Hospital. Over 200 beds there. And Madam President, if our hospital facility with satellite health centers can take care of 20,000 based on Petrotrin's report, but it's more than 20,000. You can only imagine what a 200-bed facility can do. So I want to turn on to the knock-on effects of this refinery. Now, Madam President, the subsidy, the petroleum subsidy. Under the Honorable Minister's ministry, the Ministry of Energy was pointing to a Dominica model for the price that we may pay for gas, and they showed that the price would have increased by more than 50% in any case, as from what it is now on diesel, super, and premium.
Senator Obika, you have 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. However, that's when you add all the costs for transshipping, brokers' fees, redistribution, and so on. However, when the question was posed to the Honorable Minister in Parliament, in the other place, as regards the cost, the true cost, sorry, per litre, to the taxpayer, I believe that the response was, that's an answer for the Minister of Finance. So I think what the people of Trinidad and Tobago deserve to get by now, these imports these imports of super, diesel, and gasoline premium, what is the true cost to the taxpayer? The Minister of Finance was on record lamenting that the fuel subsidy would rise above $1 billion by the end of calendar 2018. What is the size of the fuel subsidy at this point in time, given the fact that we are importing? Given the fact that the Minister of Finance is on record in the other place, on Hansard, as saying, during the budget debate, as saying is 1.7, I think he said, billion, is the amount owed by the state to Petrotrin indirectly, based on the fuel subsidy, not paying the fuel subsidy. What will be the new amount owed? Because clearly the state can't owe these foreign entities, so they will have to pay on demand when the fuel is delivered to Trinidad and Tobago. What will be the new level of this fuel subsidy? The government must answer this question to the people. The other question they must also answer regards the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. The price of oil was set at $65 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate has dropped to about $55 a barrel. As of 2 weeks ago, it's below 60 consistently. And therefore, it's below the 57.8 benchmark to set off the government dipping into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. The government must answer on my last point, Madam President. Will they dip into and raid the Heritage and Stabilization Fund in this fiscal year? And with that, I thank you.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on this motion. Madam President, when I was growing up in Rio Claro, the least desirable meal was something called macafouchette. And what it was whatever remained, a piece of okra, an end of meat, some of this, some of that. It was when times when you didn't go to the grocery or the market, whatever remained. I listened to my colleague, Senator Obika, a young man from Point with an interest in Petrotrin and oil and gas, and an economist and all of that. And I thought there was going to be something of substance, a steak, but I got macafouchette. And after the story of the house being broken down, and that is marginally connected to oil, and only connected because the owner of that land where the demolition took place is Trintopec, a company that has long departed. So that is a real stretch of a connection to oil and gas and the economy. That is as close as it came to a discussion on oil and on this motion. And you know, as you laugh, as you smile, Senator Obika, I'll also tell you about something I learned early in Rio Claro. My colleague, Senator Khan, will know, and I hope I'm not out of order. I also learned very early what is joke for schoolboy is dead for crapo. And that is what this is about. I am hearing about the 9,000, you know. But what about the other 1-point-something million people at risk? Who is speaking for the 1-point-something million citizens of this country who have been put at risk with the state in which Petrotrin finds itself? And Madam President, nothing I say today should diminish my and this government concern about the Petrotrin workers, the fence line communities, and the wider economic interests which are at risk when you deal with something as significant as Petrotrin. Nothing I say should diminish my concern. I don't want to rehash it. I know they left. No, that's not the day you left. The day when, yes, you left that day. When I recounted my experience, having not only been VSEP'd in Caroni, but having VSEP'd myself from Caroni. And it was not an easy decision, and it's not easy, wasn't something, and I recounted it, but I would not say more. I would invite you to go and read it on the Hansard. So should not, Madam President, diminish my concern and our concern with Petrotrin. But what matters at the end of the day is the state of Petrotrin and the fate of the citizens of this country based on what is happening in Petrotrin. And let us not macafouchette, Sagicor. Well, look, Scotiabank announced the sale of its interests in certain parts of the Caribbean today. And the insurance business of Scotiabank is being sold to Sagicor. So if Sagicor is good for Scotiabank, a massive bank, well-run bank, you don't think that Sagicor is good enough for the Petrotrin employees? Why it takes, and you know, if you come to shoot, if there's a cabinet minister with an interest in Sagicor, and leverage that interest to get, say it, put something substantial in the pot and stop putting scraps on a matter that is important to the national interest. And Madam President, all of this in my community, I have an interest in a pan side. I can't dance, I can't play pan, I can't sing. I have an interest in a pan side. But to think Senator Obika, a young man from Petrotrin, you are willing to put this country at risk for the sponsorship of a pan side? Come on now, man. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, at this juncture, we will suspend for the break, and we will return at 5 p.m.